Good evening and welcome to the January 16th, 2008 meeting of the Traffic and Transportation Advisory Commission. Please rise and join me with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Bravo, will you please call the roll?
Vice Chair Lemo?
Present.
Commissioner Gregory?
Present.
Commissioner Price?
Present.
Commissioner McMahon? Here. And Chair Diane McKay is absent today.
Thank you. Any person who wishes to speak regarding an item on the agenda or a subject within the city's jurisdiction during the public comments portion of the agenda must file a public speaker card with a recording secretary before that portion of the agenda is called. Any person who wishes to speak on a specific agenda item must file a public speaker card before the specific item is called. Persons addressing the Traffic Commission are requested to state their name and their city of residence for the record. Under state law, issues presented or introduced under public comments can have no action and will be referred to the Traffic Engineering Division Manager for administrative action or scheduled on a subsequent agenda. It would be appreciated if you'd turn off all your cell phones and pagers during the meeting. And as a reminder, there is not to be any dialogue between the audience and the commissioners at any time. TOTV can only record your comments when you're speaking into the microphone. A wireless microphone is available for your convenience should you need to step away from the podium while speaking. Next, we'll call agenda item number 4, which is public comments.
There are no public comments tonight.
There are no public comments tonight, so we will move on to agenda item number 5, which are summary notes of our October 24th, 2007 meeting. And at this time, I'd like to ask commissioners if they have any comments to the summary notes. Hearing none, we will now move forward with agenda item number 6. And for this item, I will turn things over to our secretary, Mrs. Bravo.
Thank you. Now is the time for the 2008 Traffic and Transportation Advisory Commission reorganization. Nominations are now in order and open for the position of chair for the Traffic and Transportation Advisory Commission. Are there any nominations? Chair McMahon? Commissioner McMahon?
Yes, I'd like to nominate our Vice Chair, Rick Lemo.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations? Okay. Thank you. There being no further nominations for chair, nominations are declared closed. Congratulations.
Thank you. By the end of the year, they'll tell me that I will learn to turn the mic on at the proper times and all that other stuff. And now going forward, we're going to take nominations for our vice chair. And Commissioner McMahon.
Yes, I'd like to nominate Joel Price, Commissioner Joel Price.
Commissioner Joel Price has been nominated. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, I'm assuming with the commissioners we can, by acclamation, name Vice Chair Price. Congratulations, Joel.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sam. We are now at agenda item number 8, which is our engineer's report. And Mrs. Bravo, can you please open the community meeting?
Now is the time and place to discuss the traffic evaluation at the intersection of Cloverleaf Street and Westlake Boulevard.
Mr. Mashiko, will you please present the report?
Thank you, Chair Lemo. This item is a traffic evaluation of the intersection of Cloverleaf Street at Westlake Boulevard. It's a T intersection in the North Ranch area of town. This time I'd like to just state the recommendation of staff. It's twofold. The first item is to have the intersection of Cloverleaf Street and Westlake Boulevard added to the city's master plan of signals to be funded during the fiscal year 2010-2011 budget cycle or sooner. And the second item is to have staff monitor the location over a 12-month period for any correctable collisions that may occur. If the collisions exceed 5 or more in a 12-month period, only then would we hold a follow-up meeting to review implementation of a possible westbound right turn only restriction. To give a little background, this item is here before the Traffic Commission tonight because on September 9th of 2007, the City Council received a petition by the residents to install multi-way stop sign control at this intersection. The primary issues here are visibility, the curvature of Westlake Boulevard, landscaping at both the southeast and northeast corners, as well as privately owned fences at southeast and northeast corners. The pictures that I'm going to show you clearly illustrate the issues here. But first, here's a vicinity map showing the intersection between Canaan Road and Valley Spring Drive. There's 35 homes accessed from this intersection. The homes are on Cloverleaf Street, Wild Sage Court, and Alder Creek Place. This first picture shows the view looking south as you're traveling westbound at this intersection. You can clearly see the road curves. There's landscaping and as well as a fence just to the south. The visibility here, our measurements were taken 8 feet back of the curb prolongation, and it's roughly 250 feet. This is a view looking to the north. Again, here there's curvature, landscaping, as well as a fence. And looking to the north, there's a little bit more visibility, about 100 feet more, about 350 to 370 feet. In our evaluation, we took a look at the stop sign warrants established by California, since the primary request here was to establish multi-way stop sign control. And the Caltrans established a number of criteria to look at before putting in stop sign control, because it is a tool mainly to regulate right-of-way at busy intersections. Traffic volume is a primary measure that we look at. We set out traffic counters at this intersection for about a week. And what we're looking for is whether or not the intersection averages 140 vehicles from the Cloverleaf leg of the intersection over the 8 highest hours of the day. And also we take a look at whether or not the intersection would average 350 vehicles total from all approaches over those same 8 hours. We also took into consideration traffic signal warrants here. We saw that possibly it may not qualify for a stop sign, so we also took a look at whether or not it would be appropriate to put a traffic signal here. So what we did was, with the traffic counts that we compiled, took a look at whether or not it met any of the 8 traffic signal warrants that we typically look at, and those are also established by Caltrans. The first criteria that they look at is traffic volume, either over an 8-hour period or a 4-hour period. And that I'll talk about more later, and that's mainly what we did here. We took a look at the peak hour volume. It's not a common warrant that we look at. There's a pedestrian volume for a high pedestrian crossing location, and that's not the case here. There's a school crossing warrant if you have a school zone, and that's not the case here. And then there's a coordinated signal system warrant. That's not very common. Collision rates, we took a look at that, as well as another warrant called the roadway network warrant, which is not common, and we did not apply that here. When we took a look at the signal warrants, the volume warrant is the primary measure that we looked at. There's two cases. One is called the minimum vehicular volume warrant. It takes a look at how much volume comes from the minor leg, as well as how much volume comes from the major street. For this warrant, you need to satisfy 140 vehicles per hour from the minor leg and 420 vehicles per hour from the major leg. There's a second case called the interruption of continuous traffic, and that again looks at the minor leg, requires 700 or 70 vehicles per hour and 630 vehicles from the major street leg. In short, what we found is that neither of the Caltrans warrants were satisfied for the stop warrant and the signal warrant based on the amount of volume that enters and exits the intersection. For the stop warrant, the volume was rather low. You can you can estimate that based on the 35 homes. What we averaged was about 22 vehicles per hour during the 8 highest hours of the day. The average, or the warrants require that you average at least 140 vehicles per hour, and that was not satisfied. The signal warrant was not satisfied either. The highest 1 hour volume that we found was 26 vehicles, and we would require at least 140 vehicles average at the intersection during the 8 highest hours. We took a look at the collision rate at this intersection over a 46-month period, and we found that three collisions were reported. Only one collision involved a westbound vehicle exiting Cloverleaf Street, and this was with a southbound vehicle. There were 2 other single vehicle incidents. One was northbound, and the second one was southbound. The northbound incident was DUI, which is not correctable with any form of traffic control. In addition, we took a look at the sight distance, the visibility. The visibility looking to the south was 250 feet, and the other slide looking to the north, I mentioned, showed visibility was about 370 feet. What we require here, based on our city standard, is about 585 feet. So visibility is below the normal standards. So based on the traditional requirements that we follow, stop signs are not qualified, and the signals do not qualify here. What we are recommending is that a signal be installed at this intersection. However, funding would be during the 2010-2011 budget cycle. What we're citing there's 2 overriding considerations here, even though the traditional volume requirements are not met. Number one is the sight distance is not sufficient. It does not meet the city standard. And secondly, there's no secondary access for the 3 streets that access this intersection. And we would also recommend that we monitor this intersection for a 12-month period, as I mentioned earlier, and if and only if there's 5 correctable collisions over a 12-month period, we would then come back and hold another public meeting to discuss a possibility of a right turn only restriction. That concludes this report, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Do our commissioners have any questions to staff? All right. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead,
I'm
Tom.
sorry.
Commissioner.
With the traffic flow on Westlake Boulevard, if the stop sign was put there, What kind of backup would that create, especially to the south?
Okay, we had situation here at this along Westlake Boulevard years ago, prior to the signalization of the Canaan Road and Valley Spring Drive intersections. During the peak hours, we had quite a bit of backup because the volume level along Westlake Boulevard is rather high, especially that there's probably quite a bit of diversion on Westlake Boulevard due to the 23 freeway backup. And it's difficult to say how long or the extent of the backup would occur, but it's possible that in the evening peak hour, if you have multi-way stop sign control, it's possible that this traffic could back up all the way to Valley Spring Drive. But that's something that it's
Okay,
difficult.
so and then impact the light cycle and then kind of create a bottleneck.
Yes, that would create a bottleneck point on Westlake Boulevard.
Any other questions of the commissioners? Okay, anyone wishing to address the commission on this agenda item may do so by filling out a purple speaker card or blue written statement card. As of right now, I have 2 cards, and one gentleman is listed as the main speaker. I will let you know. Oh, that's your note. Sorry about that. For those of you speaking tonight, we will have Secretary Bravo let you know when to begin, and the red light will appear when your time is up. Our first speaker will have 10 minutes with the ability for a 5-minute wrap-up, and because he is the main speaker. The main speaker is listed as Mr. Barry Lundvall. We here? All right, please. And please state your name and your city of residence, please.
Also known as Westlake Village. And I submitted some written reports to the traffic engineer this morning, and I believe he's made a copy of those and distributed those to the members of the commission. And I'd just like to take the time to kind of summarize those items that I mentioned in my written comments. First off, I would like to compliment the department on the report. It was very comprehensive, detailed, and it was done in a very timely manner. Overall, my feeling is I support the recommendation in the report as far as installing the traffic light. Although, as part of recommendation 3, there's this right turn restriction for the people traveling westbound on Cloverleaf, and I'm strongly opposed to that provision of the recommendation. And I think there's another one of the residents of our subdivision that's prepared to submit some additional names that also disagree with that. But overall, I support the idea of the light. We're a little disappointed that it's going to be 2 to 3 years away before we get it. And there are some things that we think we can do to make the intersection safer in the interim. And those are the 3 things I've mentioned in my comments. The first and most important to us is speed control along Westlake Boulevard. As you know, the sight distance is limited, and as the traffic speed increases, that decreases the amount of time we have to make a decision whether to enter either northbound or southbound on Westlake Boulevard. And I think, the speed limit used to be 45 miles an hour on Westlake Boulevard. It was raised to 50 miles an hour a couple of years ago. We're not sure exactly why, but that compounds our sight distance situation there. So we would like to see additional either radar enforcement or the mobile radar unit put out there to warn people about how fast they're going, because we think it's really appropriate to control speed in both directions on Westlake Boulevard. On item number 2, they're looking southbound from Westlake Boulevard. There are some Verizon equipment boxes that interrupt our line of sight, and we'd like to see it investigated to relocate those boxes. not only are they a problem by themselves, but when the Verizon people come to service them, they park their vans and trucks there in the bike lane, and it makes it really difficult to see from the southbound side. Thirdly, there are U-turns allowed in both directions at this intersection for people traveling on Westlake Boulevard. For those traveling southbound, there is a left turn lane that they can pull into and get out of the main flow of traffic. On the northbound side, there is not a corresponding left turn lane for them to get out of the main traffic flow. So when a person slams on the brakes to try and make a U-turn there, it disrupts the traffic flow coming northbound, and I believe it impacts the overall safety of that intersection. I agreed to be the main speaker, but everybody was going to poke me if I didn't say enough or bring up the item, so poke me.
And you will have some time after the other speakers to come up as well. Before we move on, I'd like to ask if anybody has found any keys in the parking structure, particularly on the second level. We have a city employee who's trying to go home, but they don't have any keys. Alrighty, thank you. By the way, if anybody at home found those keys, bring them back. Thank you, Mr. Linville. We're going to continue on now with our speakers. Our next speaker is Craig Liedersdorf, followed by Rookie Mills. And I apologize if I mispronounce anyone's name. Mr. Liedersdorf? Is it Rocky? I'm sorry.
I figured it.
Your mom called in and said, call you Rookie.
Thank you, Mr. Lemo. And first, I wish to thank the Commission for taking on this matter, and I particularly like to thank Mr. Mashiko and his staff for what I think is an excellent report. As an engineer myself, I appreciate his job.
Sir, can we get you to know your name and city of residence?
Sorry, Craig Liedersdorf from Thousand Oaks, from the neighborhood in question. Again, thanks to the Commission, and particular thanks to Mr. Mashiko and his staff for a report that's very professional and thorough. And as an engineer, I appreciate the thought and thoroughness that went into the evaluation. I think it's right on target. I think you've addressed the problem and correctly assessed it, and my wife and I both feel strongly that the answer provided in the report of ultimately a traffic light installation is appropriate. There's a significant risk to public health at this intersection, and I agree wholeheartedly with what Barry Lindvall said a few moments ago. It stems primarily from limited sight distance and from excessive speed. And while the criterion here for judging the need for a light, I believe, is the 85th percentile in speed, 53 miles an hour, unfortunately, it's the 99th percentile that causes the accidents and causes the near heart failure we have when we enter and leave this neighborhood, particularly on a bike, God help you, and I do that several times a week. I understand the reason for the increase in speed. I believe I do. And yet, for those of us who have to leave the neighborhood, and particularly for those of us who have teenage drivers or friends who are not familiar with this intersection, leaving and entering the neighborhood, it is a significant threat to those people and to all of us, I believe. And I think the solution proposed by the staff would remedy it. Like Barry, I would hope it could be implemented sooner. And while I'm not thrilled at the prospect of right-hand turn only as punishment to our neighborhood for those who speed on that road, I don't think we've caused the problem. If we had to live with that for a year or two, I think even that's acceptable, as long as that became not the de facto solution that was cheaper than placing a light at that intersection. As Barry said, the switch boxes for Verizon are a significant impediment to visibility looking to the south. If it's possible to relocate those, it would be a great help. What many of us do now is pull part way out to look around those boxes, and then we're often given the digital wave or nearly impacted by cars that are traveling northbound on Westlake Boulevard. And finally, to my neighbors, I think we're a pretty close group of people, and you'll probably hear some different opinions tonight, but I appreciate everyone's coming out here, and I would ask you to remember that it may be one of us or it may be someone we know who could be impacted if we don't support some concerted action at this intersection, which I think is a significant risk as it currently stands. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Liedersdorf. Our next speaker is Rocky Mills, followed by Paulette Gilbert.
Good evening. I'm Rocky Mills, Westlake Village, or Thousand Oaks, depending on how you look at it. I've looked at these alternatives. Stop sign. I don't think it's a very good approach. I think it'll slow up traffic. I think that was already mentioned. That was his question. Right turn only is a big penalty. I don't think we need to have that. I'm okay with the stop light, but I think there's an alternative that we haven't looked at, and I would like to present that to you. My wife has a drawing. She's going to present that to you. I would call this a merge lane. This would be on southbound Westlake Boulevard, where there's plenty of room that if we cross the intersection, we could get into a merge lane and be safe there, waiting for traffic to come from the southbound Westlake Boulevard. Right now, I can do it. I do it. If I can see that there's no traffic coming up Westlake Boulevard and I want to turn left, I can get out halfway into the intersection. I can turn my car somewhat sideways, and I can be squeezed in that island. It's not a pretty sight. I would prefer to have lanes there. I would prefer to have where the island is on the in the middle, part of that taken away, and create, in fact, a safe merge lane for me. That would be ideal. Part of the issue is, as you're turning left, is you look down left on the northbound traffic. I'm sorry.
We're looking at your picture. Very nice picture.
Thank you. Thank you, Google.
Oh, so you did not take a helicopter and come down. I thought that was a very good picture, though. I didn't realize Google got that good.
Pretty good. The issue is when you turn left, you can see the traffic coming up so far, and you're looking right, and you're looking left, and you're looking right, and you're looking left. Finally, you make the bold move, there's no traffic coming, and you cut out. All of a sudden, you were wrong. And there's traffic coming down from the right, coming down Westlake Boulevard. But if you have a place to hide, a place to sit, where you can wait out the oncoming traffic, and you know they're not going to hit you, they're not going to slow down because they think they're going to hit you, this would be a great solution. Thank you. Any questions on that? And it's cheap. It's paint. Paint and a little getting rid of some concrete.
Do any of our commissioners have any questions for the speaker?
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mills. Our next speaker is Paulette Gilbert, followed by Philip Grunland.
Hello, I'm Paulette Gilbert, Westlake Village, and I live at 3950 Cloverleaf Street, right there at the corner. My husband is working tonight, unfortunately, so I am representing him. He felt very strongly against the right-hand turn only, option number 3. So he walked the neighborhood on Sunday evening and talked to all the neighbors, or all but 7 he couldn't get contacted with. So he had a petition, and I want to submit that, of all these people who signed it, just opposing the right-hand, or the right-hand turn only option. Even making a right-hand turn from that corner doesn't guarantee that it is a safe exit. The visibility is difficult. The speed is difficult. Even if you make only a right-hand turn, you could get rear-ended. Maybe you're not T-boned, but you could get rear-ended. So to us, that was not a great option. We support your recommendations for the signal. Maybe in the interim, moving that big box that I went and measured today right next to my property, which is quite large, and maybe that'll solve our problem. Thank you. Do I have to give this to someone?
Yes, if you would hand that to Ms. Bravo, please. Thank you, Ms. Gilbert. Philip Grunland.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Philip Grunland. I live on Wild Sage Court and at Thousand Oaks. Rocky, I think you're onto something. I think there are very inexpensive alternatives and solutions here. I agree with the fact that it's a very dangerous intersection, T-bone, hard to get out. But consider this, if you will. I spent some time on this Saturday. If you're driving north on Westlake Boulevard, and as soon as you hit the intersection of Valley Spring Drive and Westlake Boulevard, you see a sign that says 50 miles per hour. That's 30 feet from the corner. Okay? Keep that in mind. Approximately 75 feet from that sign, or a total of 105 feet, is another sign that reads Road Narrows. Approximately 540 feet from the Road Narrows sign, or 645 total from the corner, is another sign that reads 30 miles per hour with a T-bone indicating an intersection. Approximately 192 feet from the 30 mile per hour T-bone sign, or a total of 837 feet from the corner, is another sign that reads Cross Traffic Limited Sight Distance. Finally, there is 117 feet from that sign reads Cross Traffic Limited Sight Distance to the southeast corner gore point of the intersection of Westlake Boulevard and Cloverleaf. Here's a solution. The signs, the traffic signs, need to be repositioned. And here's my solution. Eliminate that 50 mile per hour sign near the northeast corner of Westlake Boulevard and Valley Spring Drive. Because now that the traffic sign is there, people are going 50 miles per hour, and they look across that intersection by the North Ranch Community Center, and they'd see that 50 mile per hour sign, they ain't going to slow down. Right? And it's not until they get way down that distance that they see 30 miles per hour. So here's my solution. Eliminate the 50 mile per hour traffic sign that's on that corner. Move the 30 mile per hour T-bone sign as well as the cross traffic limited sight sign much closer to the northeast corner of the Westlake Boulevard at Valley Spring Drive. This will give drivers, especially those that are flying through the intersection on a green light, ample time to slow down and adjust their speed well prior to the intersection of Westlake Boulevard and Cloverleaf. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grenlund. We have also 3 written statement cards. Is Jay Bartlestone here? I'm going to just hand you your card back so you can put a position on it for us. It didn't check off what you really felt. And then when you tell us so we don't single you out, I'll tell you what all the positions were together. So if you could fill that out. If you could fill that out.
I'm sorry, we can't have dialogue from the audience.
We couldn't hear you from there anyway, but we're going to tell you what the written statement cards were as well. Okay, I have 3 written statement cards. Actually, one that is in favor of the request petition. One is in favor of the traffic light, and one that is opposed because the person felt there should be more time to evaluate. Commissioner McMahon.
Just an explanation, if you wanted to fill one out, if you don't want to speak, it just gives your information for us, for the record, and then you can write on it whatever you want. If you want to pull out pieces of the report and comment on them, you can do that. If you want to just make a blanket, I hate it all, comment, it's what you want to make of it, but it's an official record so that it will go to us and on the city record, and that's all it is. It's whatever you want it to be.
Thank you, Commissioner. Now I'll ask if our commissioners have any questions of staff, please. Commissioner, Vice Chair Price.
Thank you. A couple of questions. Maybe I'll just start with one and work from there. Are we able to see the photograph looking south from Cloverleaf on Westlake Boulevard? Can you bring that up again? I was trying to see where those boxes are that are being described that are causing a limited. Okay, so they're not in there. All right.
And just as a point of information to maybe look up, I don't even know if we can address that tonight, but if we could find out if those boxes are by some form of protected easement for whoever's using those utilities.
I guess I'll keep going since nobody else wants.
No, you might as well finish your questions to staff.
The signs that the one speaker spoke of, I wasn't aware, and it's not commented on in your report anywhere, about the reduction in speed from 50 miles an hour down to 30. Is that accurate?
Okay. I think what's there is it's not. There's two signs that he was talking about. 50 miles an hour is closer to Valley Spring Drive, and that's a white sign with black letters, and that's a regulatory sign announcing what the speed limit of the road is. And that's something I think we're going to have to keep there just for enforcement reasons and legal reasons. And as you drive further up northbound, you'll get closer to the intersection. There's a combination sign that has on one pole intersection ahead, which is it's a diamond sign or diamond-shaped sign, yellow with black lettering. And right below it is an advisory sign that says 30 miles an hour, and that's to encourage people to slow down because there's an intersection ahead that's difficult to see. In addition, there's also cross traffic ahead, limited sight distance. That's another combination sign, I believe, just to the north of those set of signs. And I believe we posted those both on the right-hand side as well as in the median, just to make sure it catches the driver's attention.
Okay. So the yellow regulatory, or the yellow advisory sign, obviously is not something that we can use to cite violators there. The other question I had is, Westlake Boulevard is surveyed for speed. Is it not for radar? Yes. Sorry.
Yes. It is currently has a survey for radar enforcement.
Any other questions? Commissioner Gregory?
Actually, I have a couple, but let me just stick with the Verizon box. Can you elaborate a little more on the line of sight issue that it creates? Is it the boxes themselves when they're not being worked upon, or the fact that, and I have observed this myself, and I don't even take that shortcut that often, that Verizon seems to live in that location correcting something in those boxes, and it's their service truck that's creating the largest obstacle?
Yes, I believe there's two conditions when it's not being worked on. There is a line of sight impediment created by, there's two boxes, a short box and then there's a tall box. And it's a tall box when the Verizon vehicle pulls up curbside, they could just work right on the box. And when that vehicle is there, that severely cuts down the line of sight. There's different ways at which people probably look at that intersection. If you're in a tall SUV, you could probably look over the box and see the traffic that's traveling northbound. Other people might be looking behind the box in the pedestrian area, and then as a vehicle travels further north, they'll lose the vehicle once it passes behind the box, and then once it passes the box, it emerges again. So that's something that we can look at and contact Verizon. We'll verify it is Verizon and see if they can relocate that box. I know we've had utility companies locate their service boxes in the city before, and we'll definitely look at this one.
That'd be great. Then I guess my next one would be, you are going to comment on the merge lane that was requested in public comment. You're going to give us your take on that? Okay, I'll hold off. From experience, do you find that these reduced speed, the T crossing 30 mile per hour sign is really ever observed by drivers?
Well, in general, usually any sign that we post, and this is something that we talk about whenever we post signs, is that they're usually effective in the early going. Usually the first several months or so, someone will notice that there's a new sign there, and it may change their driving behavior or bring something to their attention that there's an intersection ahead or some other road condition that they weren't aware of. But as time passes, people generally tend to tune signs out, so they just resort back to their previous behavior. So if that answers your question.
It does. And is there some alternate signs that we might substitute just to, let's say, refresh people's awareness of that sign to overcome what you just said?
Well, there's basically the Caltrans engineering manuals that we follow. There's only a limited number of signs that we're allowed to post, and depending on the situation, the signs that we posted there were appropriate for the condition. You have a intersection ahead that's somewhat hidden, and we have an advisory or recommended speed to reduce your speed to the sight distance condition that was brought to your attention. One thing we could try doing, and we have done this in the past, is added orange flags to a sign that might bring more attention. But then again, it's another issue of, will the drivers tune them out over time?
Yeah, that's my observation too. Maybe you could also comment. I'm starting to see the use of some solar-powered LEDs instead of things like orange flags, just to, catch people's eyes and attentions in places. Are those cost-effective, and are we going to start adopting those possibly?
Okay, you're probably referring to the radar feedback signs that we have on Lynn Road.
Actually, no. I've, in my travels, I notice a lot of different signage, and these are really just small little LEDs that really just highlight awareness of where signs are. They're not speed or anything. It's just to draw a driver's attention over to a sign that they would normally just drive by. And I do see those starting to be placed in maybe some critical key. I don't know the warrants why they were placed, but has staff looked at any of these things? Are these new tools that are coming up, haven't really been approved and are still in the initial phase?
Okay, it sounds as if what you might be talking about is a solar-powered flashing beacon that's mounted. It's LED display. Usually it's a 12-inch lens, and it could be mounted above the sign, and it'll flash at a regular interval to add extra awareness.
It was a variation of that, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's something that we could look at. It's something that we don't have very, very many of them throughout town. We have just a limited number, I believe, at some signal ahead warning signs. I know there's one on Olson Road as you approach the sheriff's station. There's a signal ahead sign with a flashing beacon there. There's a sign on Thousand Oaks Boulevard near Vera Merida with a flashing beacon, and I believe those have been added because of the curvature of the road, and so that might be a useful application here.
Thank you.
Commissioner Price and then Commissioner McMahon. Go ahead.
Mr. Mashiko, it seems like you brought up Lynn Road as a comparison in some regard, and it seems that part of the problem on Westlake Boulevard is caused by speed as well. Does the curvature in the roadway and some of the other, the collisions that have been noted on Westlake, not just at this particular intersection we're discussing, but other intersections there, might they warrant a reduction in the speed on that particular stretch of road?
Okay, well, it's difficult to lower a speed limit. Basically, speed limits, they're based on the California Vehicle Code and generally posted 5 miles of the 85th percentile speed. And in this case, the 85th percentile speed is 53 miles an hour, so it's posted 50 miles an hour. And I believe you're asking whether or not it could be reduced further, say down to 45.
Well, I know that there are factors that come into play there that would mitigate that 85th percentile, and we've discussed those in the past too. So without going into the whole 85th percentile, I guess my question is simply, is the curvature in the roadway there one of the factors that would allow us to reduce the speed limit there, coupled with the number of collisions in that stretch of roadway?
Well, generally, from what I've heard, is that usually it's items that are not, or road conditions that are not readily apparent to a motorist. For example, the curvature of the road. As you're driving the road, you can visually see that the road curves through this segment of Westlake Boulevard. Things that are not apparent would be like a high collision rate, something that's higher than the norm for that type of 4-lane roadway with a divided center median. And I think from what I recall, the radar survey that we used to set that speed limit did not have a higher than average collision rate.
Okay. I'm curious, and this is kind of getting off the point, but I think it could bring us back to the Westlake issue, and that is whether or not the speed feedback signs on Lynn Road have caused there to be a reduction in speed on Lynn Road. My sense is, because I drive that stretch of roadway quite a bit, and my sense is that as I'm driving, I see the feedback indicators saying that people are going 40, 42, 44 miles an hour. So I'm wondering if that might help in this application as well, as having some speed feedback signs on that stretch of roadway on Westlake.
Okay. Yeah, the Lynn Road feedback signs, we haven't taken a detailed look at the data, the before and after the signs were posted. But what we've heard from the residents who are concerned and live near where the signs are posted, we've been told that they feel that there's been a reduction in speed. But then again, it's one of those where right now it's been a short period of time that those signs have been in place, and the plan on Lynn Road is to rotate the location of those signs so that, we talked about a sign, if it's there over a long period of time, people will tune them out. So on Lynn Road, we're going to be relocating those signs on a regular basis. So this could be a possible application for those radar feedback signs. But then again, the Lynn Road committee was formed to take a look at the specific circumstances along the entire stretch of Lynn Road between the 23 freeway and the 101 freeway, and that was one of the recommendations. So there's not a formal plan that we have in the city yet to use those radar feedback signs citywide.
Commissioner McMahon.
I don't want to belabor the point of these Verizon boxes, but I was just curious and maybe thinking ahead. If they cannot be moved, would a no stopping sign or a red curb be useful in this situation? Because it sounds like it's not just the boxes, but it's the van that parks there to fix them.
Yes, that's something that we can do, and we could probably talk to Verizon and talk about how the service vehicle, when they pull up, how it blocks sight distance even further. So just by communicating with Verizon directly, maybe we can get them to change the manner in which they service the boxes.
I need you to clarify something for me. Did you say that the residents on Lynn Road say that the warnings are working or are not working?
From a handful of residents, we've heard that they feel there's been a reduction in speed.
That's what you said. Okay, I kind of suspected that because I've watched that happen here and actually in 3 other communities, and it's absolutely amazing. They think there's a cop on the other side of that sign. And if you're listening, there probably is.
I'm just curious. I mean, I know we use Caltrans recommendations. Do they take into account a posted speed from an intersection and the extent of the grade of that road? Do they take any of that factor in? And kind of where I'm going with this is if I was stopped at the light at Valley Springs and I see a posted 50-mile-an-hour sign, I'm going to start my car up. There is a grade. The way my car works is I got X amount of torque. I'm driving that engine. It's shifting gears. And I finally get up to where I want to be, and wham, slam, I see a sign that says 30 miles an hour now. Now, is it my nature to hit the brakes? Probably not. Okay, and that is my understanding of the situation. I've driven it before. Nobody's going to do it. So I was just wondering, from that standpoint, is there like a distance, a grade from a dead stop of having that 50-mile-an-hour posted sign? Would that come into play at all, or are we just really getting ahead of ourselves because there's a gas crunch? Okay, as far as placement of the 30-mile-per-hour sign in relation to the 50-mile-per-hour sign, the main requirement is that, and this is sort of subjective in such a way that the sign should be visible with adequate notification prior to the intersection. And so I believe where we place the signs is such a distance where we have sufficient braking distance. If someone were to pull out, right when someone views the sign, we feel that they were adequately notified that there was an intersection that was hidden because of the curvature of the road. So let me clarify what you just said. Okay, as my understanding, that sign isn't really a recommendation to go 30 miles an hour. It's just a recommendation that you may have to slow down to 30 miles an hour because of crossing traffic. So it really is just purely informational, and drivers can just totally ignore it, and it's the person that pulls out in front of them because they do truly have the right of way. So now the line of sight becomes a real issue because a person going 50 miles an hour really isn't obligated. It's just an informational sign that says, please watch out, there is somebody there, and it's somebody's nature. They're talking on the cell phone, whatever, and it's like, hey, don't pull out in front of me. I'm where I should be. So the people that are trying to merge out really have the issue. Is there a way that we could either increase the signage or, as I mentioned before, make it more visible so that people are really thinking about that intersection maybe a little way ahead of time, because the line of sight is an issue. I know it must be there. Yeah, well, the only, I guess, the ways to bring attention of this intersection sooner would be either relocate the sign further down, closer to Valley Spring, or possibly look at a flashing beacon, so that that the beacon draws your attention to the sign as you're driving,
north on Westlake Boulevard. So that's something that we'll definitely look into that.
Yeah, and really my point really is to just let somebody be thinking that, no, I don't really want to get up to 50 miles an hour. There is an area I should be just simply driving 30. And I know we can't change the 50-mile-an-hour posting by law, but if we brought that to their attention, I think we could impact that. So I appreciate you looking at it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Mashiko, can you now address our speakers' concerns and questions?
Okay, there's just a couple other concerns that were mentioned. First one, I believe that we didn't address was the posting a northbound no U-turn sign at the intersection, and that's something that we probably could do in this situation. Normally, we don't sign a location with no U-turn where there's no left turn pocket. Typically, we don't expect drivers to, make that type of maneuver, but in this case, we'll go ahead and post that. The other one, I believe, was related to the sketch that was submitted that shows what we would probably call a refuge area for someone that's coming out of Cloverleaf, where basically they're making the left turn in 2 steps. First, they travel halfway out, and where the extension of the center median is, that's where they would rest their vehicle and then wait for a second gap in traffic in the southbound direction before they enter traffic. At least what's shown on the sketch probably is not the traditional way to do it. We could definitely look into that. We'd probably have to add some yellow lines along the center to show that it's basically a continuation of the median. Removing the median, I'm not sure how easy that would be to do at this time. Basically, when you remove the median, it sounds like what you would have to do is create an official acceleration lane where you would have to remove quite an extent of the length of that center median so that someone can accelerate to speed and then merge at the prevailing speed. So that, I would imagine, would be quite expensive, and it might even be just as much as putting in the cost for a traffic signal. But I think we could look at creating or defining more of that center refuge area with the yellow lines. And I think that's about it for the comments that were mentioned.
Thank you, Mr. Mashiko. And now we'll open it up for commissioner discussion or a motion. Anybody want to go first with their discussion and or motion?
I'd be happy to discuss.
Vice Chair Price.
Thank you. And I guess this is kind of along the lines of a question again to Mr. Mashiko, though, but do you feel that if the boxes are able to be moved, that would mitigate the visibility restriction looking south I'm talking about there? That coupled with some of the other recommendations that we've heard tonight, such as the merge lane there halfway out, and a no U-turn signs being posted, do you think that would have the desired effect here and enable the residents there to get out safely? They'd be able to see a little bit better. Is it going to make a difference?
Well, I think removing the Verizon box will help, but ideally, what we want to achieve here is the required sight distance. And if you look in your report, there was an option 5 that talked about acquiring along the corners the landscaped areas that basically those are the areas that are impacting this situation the greatest. It's because the way that the curvature in the road, those corner sections, little triangular pieces, what's shown in those sketches, if those areas were removed, that's what's going to get you the visibility that you ideally want to have in this situation.
Mm-hmm. What is the recommended visibility distance?
We're looking for about 585 feet.
Any other commissioner questions, comments, or discussions?
Just a comment. When I was out there, I didn't even see the boxes. And when I pulled out to make the left turn, it was, to me, in my opinion, and I didn't go out there a lot, but I was there, it seemed more like it was the curvature of the street and the slight rise more than the boxes that I didn't see. And so I'm assuming that removing the boxes will help, but that they're not going to solve the problem the way we need to completely.
Other discussion? All right, then I'll weigh in. Oh.
If I could,
Chair.
I guess what I keep on going back to is Lynn Road and the intersection of Lotus there, where some similar conditions exist with limited sight distance. It's a T intersection coming out off of Lynn onto Lotus. It doesn't meet the warrants for the installation of a traffic signal. And here, staff is recommending, under somewhat similar conditions, that a signal be installed. And I'm wondering if you can address that. Maybe I'm wrong in my assumption. And I brought the report, the evaluation from the last meeting, and I look at the number of the volume per hour. I look at the number of collisions at the different intersections, and they don't appear to be that different. Yet in this case, we're recommending that, or the staff is recommending that a signal be placed.
Okay, so you're looking at like a comparison between Lotus and Lynn versus Cloverleaf and Westlake Boulevard. Okay, if you recall, over at Lotus and Lynn Road, Lotus is on the inside of a curve, and as you look to your left, I believe that was more of the direction where you have impaired visibility. As you look to your left, the primary issue there is a landscaping in the center median, and what we proposed was to eliminate a large portion of that landscaping or replace it with just low-growing ground cover, and that would probably pick up the visibility you need for that intersection. Another difference here is that Cloverleaf and Westlake, this is the only access point for the neighborhood. At Lotus and Lynn, there is a secondary access because you could take that side parallel street and get up to Camino Manzanas and then utilize the signal at that intersection. So volume-wise, they're very similar, the amount of traffic exiting the intersection, but there's those two basic differences here. The Lotus intersection seems to be something that you can correct from an impaired visibility standpoint by removing the median or the landscaping in the median, and there's a secondary access point. Although it's inconvenient, it does lead you to a signal.
I understand all of that except the looking left portion. When you're looking left, you're looking at southbound traffic coming at you first. So the center median and the shrubbery in there doesn't come into play until, or does it? Is it because of the curvature in the roadway that you're unable to see there, and the rise in the roadway too? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, correct. It's the curvature of the road of Lynn Road there. The first, say, probably the first 200 feet, 250 feet from the intersection, you can see all the vehicles approaching. But once you get beyond that point, then as the road curves to the right, that's where you start losing vehicles because of the growth in the center median.
Thank you.
I'm going to interrupt our discussion here for just a moment. Despite the best efforts of staff to keep me on the straight and narrow, I forgot to give Mr. Lundvall the last opportunity to speak as I was supposed to. So would you like to weigh in right now on your last few minutes? Thank you. Thank you. Just the main speaker gets to go one more time.
For the record, I'm Barry Lundvall, and I'm a resident of Thousand Oaks / Westlake Village. First and foremost, I want to make it clear that we're in firm support of the light recommendation, and the things we're proposing are interim steps that could be taken to mitigate the situation. We had a lot of discussion about the Verizon boxes. Even if we eliminate those, there's still the sight distance issue. And the signage, even if that's corrected, there's still an issue of speed. And the safe sight distance calculation was based on the 85th percentile, which was 53 miles an hour, and that leaves 15% of the traffic that's traveling faster than that. So the main issue is still speed and what are we going to do to control it. And there was some discussion about these portable speed displays, and that's one of the comments we had made initially, and I support those. We routinely see them on Valley Spring, and in fact they're on Upper Ranch this afternoon, and they seem to work, that people get the immediate feedback and they do slow down. So speed to us is still the issue, regardless of whether the speed limit is 50 or 45 or whatever. And we'd like to hear some discussion on what can be done to control the speed along Westlake Boulevard. The flashing light highlighting the 30 miles an hour was a good idea. One of the questions somebody gave me was, what is the cost of the traffic signal? We'd just like to know that for information. And just a minor clarification, because there seemed to be a question about it. When the original petitions were circulated through the neighborhood, I think the people that signed it with the idea that we were supporting improvements to the intersection and not necessarily a stop sign. It was later when those petitions were collected and a cover letter was put on it, that person who submitted the cover letter put in stop sign. So I think everybody is firmly behind improving the intersection and would support the stoplight. We're not pushing the stop sign, so I'd want to make that clear. The merge lane seemed like a good idea, but you still have to cross the northbound lanes to get to it, so there's still the line of sight issue there. I think that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Lundvall.
Okay.
And now, just before we go back with any discussion, I know it's strictly a ballpark, but what would a ballpark cost of a traffic signal?
Well, roughly nowadays are ranging between $150,000 to $250,000, because of mainly because of the cost of raw materials and labor have sharply risen over the recent years. But this intersection, I would imagine, because we would also interconnect this signal with the ones down at Valley Spring, up at Canaan, you're probably looking at least $200,000 for a signal here.
Thank you, Mr. Mashiko. If I remember correctly, last time I participated in a discussion on traffic signals, it took a minimum of 1 year to order one. Is that still correct?
Usually, well, for the just for the poles alone nowadays, it depends on what time of year, but the lead time on just the poles alone is up to half a year. Sometimes I believe we've experienced up to 9 months.
Thank you. And where I was going with this is, from a capital expenditure standpoint, it looks like we're 3 years out. From a fabrication standpoint, we're probably at least a year out. that year would be part of the 3 years. And so I think that we should examine some interim measures and the interim measures would not remove going forward with the light. It would just give us some steps that will work in concert with the light at some point in time. I am a big believer that this speed feedback works, particularly if you can change its location from time to time. I also think that a big improvement that will help some of your sight problems is to put no stopping along Westlake Boulevard in that area. I think it would be important to examine the merge lane, but I'm a little uncomfortable with it because it's at best a refuge lane. I think to be able to make it into a true merge lane, it's going to be cost prohibitive, and it's also sort of swimming upstream from what we've tried before. I do believe in the flashing beacons, the no U-turn. I think those are things that are reasonably quick. I would like you to also just very briefly explain to me again what the risk is of having a regular traffic light as opposed to a right turn only restriction. And because it seemed to me that some folks didn't want the right turn only restriction, and I wanted to understand how you would weigh in on that.
Well, basically, the right turn only restriction would come into play because what we'd expect there, if there's any collision rate, would be the left turning vehicle. And what we're trying to do is minimize the risk by forcing all traffic to make a right turn. And if they're destined to travel down towards the freeway, they would have to travel up to the signal at Canaan and come back and make a U-turn there and then come all the way back. But with the signal would eliminate all conflicts because of the way westbound traffic would be given a green and stops north and southbound traffic.
Could you, and I'm really thinking from the hip, shooting from the hip here, could you accomplish something similar if you had a left turn signal and that signal was 2 seconds or so after the red oncoming? Would you expect a similar positive result? Don't you love it when non-traffic people come up with these harebrained screams?
Okay, I'm not sure if I follow that.
Okay, if you're at the light that is right now recommended to be right turn only. I'm sorry. Right turn. It's a restriction so that there is no left turn. Okay? So it is right turn only.
Commissioner.
Okay, I'm obviously turned around on the road.
I think what they were talking about is if there were a lot of collisions, they would put a sign, not a traffic signal, a sign, not a light, that said no left turn.
I understand now. Strike that last question. It was like such a good idea, too. Actually, I've solved a problem that didn't exist tonight, so hopefully no one's watching at home. Let's open it up for commission discussion again.
If I may, I think it's imperative that folks understand, as Mr. Mashiko said earlier, that the traffic signal is not designed to monitor or reduce the speed. It's simply used to facilitate your exiting your street there. So if speed is an issue, and I believe it is, then I think there need to be some alternative steps taken as well. And one question I had, again, Mr. Mashiko, I keep on going back to this, or back to you, is I'm assuming that light would only be activated when somebody wanted to leave that neighborhood. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. We put detectors there, so it's basically on demand.
So then that would have minimal impact on the speed on Westlake Boulevard. I just want the folks to understand that too, because there's been a lot of discussion about the fact that there is a lot of high-speed traffic on that street. So I don't want anybody to be under the impression that this is going to be the end-all, save-all.
Any other commissioner comment? And if not, any commission motion? Commissioner Gregory.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. Staff is going to look into the flashing sign, the possibility of moving it. They are going to look into possibly repainting that merge area, because I am in agreement with my fellow commissioner. That's kind of a scary thing, but I know people are going to pull out there anyway. So, you know, if there's something that you can do with striping to assist that. And then you had already agreed on the U-turn, no U-turn. Do those items need to be part of the motion, or is that something you're just going to follow up on?
You should probably enter it in the motion, but you don't have to state each item specifically since I have it written down.
Okay. Got you. Then I'm done.
Thank you. Commissioner McMahon.
Actually, I was going to make a motion. I was going to state each item specifically, if you don't mind. I was going to move that we accept the staff's recommendation for option number 4, and in addition, investigate what can be done about the Verizon boxes, and if that doesn't work, painting a red curb or a no stopping sign. In addition, striping a refuge lane. And in addition to that, investigating the flashing LED boxes on that 30-mile-per-hour sign. And lastly, installing no U-turn signs, as was discussed, because all of those things are inexpensive and really seem, at this point, to have perhaps have some sort of an effect. And that would be until years down the road when we get the signal. And that's my motion.
Thank you, Commissioner. Ms. Bravo, will you please call for the vote?
Chair Lemo?
Aye.
I'm sorry?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Gregory?
Yes.
Commissioner McMahon?
Yes.
And Vice Chair Price?
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you. The Traffic Commission makes recommendations to the City Council, and interested parties may attend the meeting and speak either for or against the recommendation of the Traffic Commission. Any person wishing to appeal a decision of the Traffic and Transportation Advisory Commission shall file a written appeal and pay a $200 appeal fee with the clerk's office within 14 calendar days of this decision. The matter will be referred to the City Council at the earliest reasonable and available date. The $200 appeal fee will be refunded only if City Council overturns the Traffic and Transportation Advisory Commission's decision. And with that, we're going to go to agenda item number 9, status report of our prior Traffic Commission recommendations. And there are none. So we will go to thank you all for coming. We appreciate it. I know it's a lot of stuff going on at the end of your day, so thank you. Item number 10, Commission referrals from the October 24th, 2007 meeting. Mr. Mashiko, do you have any comments?
Just follow-up information there. There's 6 items that we took a look at, and if you have any questions on any of them, I'll be glad to answer them.
Commissioners, do we have any questions? Thank you very much. Hearing none, we'll move along. We have individual Traffic Commission comments. Any commissioners like to make any comments?
Yeah, actually, I would.
Commissioner Gregory.
Yeah, I just want to thank the people that were just here. Unfortunately, they've just left. It's always a real benefit to us to get feedback and some good feedback and good recommendations. And I just make this point because the neighborhoods, that have assisted us in the past have helped resolve their own problem, probably better than we could on our own. So we're happy to see that there isn't apathy in this community, and people like yourself and your neighbors, Valley Spring, who have been here many times, are much appreciated. Thank you.
Sir, you can't be heard. We need you to go on mic. Is that okay? Go ahead. The mic right over to the side is...
Sorry. I'm Jay Bartlestone from Thousand Oaks on Cloverleaf, but I believe there's an issue that was left out of the resolution, and that was the use of the speed feedback devices and possibly using those on the street to try to reduce speed, which was also an issue.
Thank you for that. Obviously, it would have to be for another meeting. We've already voted, and so it would have to be placed on the agenda again. Thank you. We'll continue with Commissioner comments. Vice Chair Price.
I had a question. During the last meeting in October, I think we'd asked for some feedback on citations, a comparison between a period from the prior year and what's taking place now on Lynn Road. Was that passed on to you, Sergeant Kenny?
No, but I do have that information. I don't know if you want me to address it now or when we get to item 13. Which would you prefer?
I suppose it can wait then.
Okay.
Any other comments? Commissioner McMahon? Okay, hearing none, we'll move down to agenda item 12, our work program and commission schedule. Mr. Mashiko, do you have any comments on the work schedule?
No.
Commissioners, any questions on that work schedule? All right, we'll move to item 13, engineers' comments. Mr. Mashiko.
I believe the item 13 is just summary of the Lynn Road implementation plan status reports that were, I believe, final during the period the Traffic Commission did not meet, and this is just a regular item we put in the packet.
Thank you.
I guess now would be a good time to ask for those results, Sergeant Kenny.
To give you probably give you some perspective on what we've been doing on Lynn Road this last year and what has occurred. The first 3 months of 2007, we were doing routine enforcement on Lynn Road, and when I say Lynn Road, I'm also including from the easterly city limits all the way to Hillcrest. I know that we've designed it from the 23, but we found that it's better to start our enforcement posture when people enter the city rather than when they're already in the city for a period of time. So in the first 3 months of 2007, we wrote a total of 123 citations in that area, specifically for speed. The next 3 months, which would have been April, May, and June, we had an issue with some of our traffic engineering surveys because of a change that had come about as to the judge's interpretation, I guess would be the best way to put it. And so we did very little enforcement during that time period because we didn't have a legal cause, I guess would be the best way to put it. So we wrote a total of 31 citations for that 3 month period. July, August, and September of 2007, we wrote a total of 104 citations. And you have to remember, that's still part of our normal enforcement posture without using the motorcycle pads that had been approved because a majority of them had not been built during that time period. In the last 3 months, October, November, December, we wrote a total of 142 citations on Lynn Road. A majority of those were using the motorcycle pads, and obviously that was a significant increase because some of that in October, they were still finishing some of the pads, so we didn't have access to all of them. For 2007, we wrote a total of 400 speeding citations on Lynn Road. In 2006, we wrote a total of 288. And in 2005, we wrote a total of 300. Averaging it out, in 2007, we averaged about, I think it was 47 citations per month on Lynn Road, I think it was. Do my math here. I'm sorry, 33 citations per month. And if you take into account the fact that for 3 of those months, we were basically doing almost no enforcement, and if we take the numbers that we used for the last 3 months of October, November, December, which was an average of 47 cites per month, we can anticipate, if we continue at the same enforcement posture, that we'll write approximately 560 to 580 citations on Lynn Road for speed, which is about double what we did in 2006.
Thank you, Sergeant. I'm hoping that you won't have to write 500 and some odd citations on Lynn Road, that maybe these speed feedback indicators are getting through to folks, and they see the efforts of increased enforcement and will therefore slow down. And apparently, at least in some limited feedback that the city's receiving, the residents are pleasantly pleased by the effects of it already. So thank you, though.
Any other questions or comments on the first item 13A? All right, hearing none, we're going to move to item 13B and C, and we have 2 speakers on item 13B. And the speakers have how long?
5 minutes.
Speakers have up to 5 minutes. Our first speaker will be J.C. Simmons, followed by David Chambers.
Thank you, Commissioners. I'm J.C. Simmons. I'm a resident of Thousand Oaks, Newberry Park for the last 24 years. I'm currently president of the Conejo Valley Cycle Club, as you probably know from prior presentations here. I'm also a contributing member of the Bicycle Master Plan for Thousand Oaks, and a contributing member of the Bicycle Advisory Team last winter that was formed after the untimely and tragic death of Dr. Glenn Carvin. Approximately 7 to 8 citizens of the city and numerous staff members participated in that meeting, finally resulting in a presentation made to City Council last summer. Our result of that was a motion to implement a plan for education, signage, and infrastructure. And part of that was a, excuse me, a half-time city staff member be coordinating on staff with the bicycle plans. As of date, I've had no contact with anybody on city facilitating that plan. However, part of that was one of the council members asked for a quarterly report from traffic back to council through this venue, and I believe that's on the docket tonight, and that's why I'm speaking. Also, at the October meeting, it was indicated that a traffic indicator marking sign had been approved and adopted by the city, which we called it the sweet spot, to tell the cyclists where to put their bicycle to be picked up by whatever traffic counting device was on the lanes. So far, I was told one of those was approved at the last meeting. So far, we've seen no plans, no actions at those being installed anyplace within the city. I know from a ride that I was on several weeks ago, 27 of us sat on Hillcrest Drive trying to turn left onto Lynn Road. there by the mall. We sat through 2 complete traffic cycles, and the signal was not counting this. Finally, an SUV pulled up in the lane next to us, and we got counted. So, and we've been told before by the engineering that don't worry about the induction coils. The video counters are going to take care of it. As far as I know, that's video counters at Lynn and Moore Park or Hillcrest, and they're not picking this up. And I want to hear what the city has to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Simmons. David Chambers.
David Chambers, Thousand Oaks, California. Also a participant in the bicycle advisory team last year or so. And we heard the presentation by Kathy Lowry to the City Council, I heard, last week. And I think that that'll be, not having heard the report, that'll be made presumably by the traffic engineer today. I assume it'll be the same sort of content. And what I'd like to observe is that thank you for the forward progress. Sometimes it always seems like this from the outside that it's glacial. But I know that there are a lot of steps that have to be followed, and I think the city's following the right steps. But what we're not getting really, and this is one of the concerns of the team, is feedback from the city to find out when things happen. Now I can find out when if I make the effort, and I do make the effort in intervals to call Kathy and find out from her what's happening, Kathy Lowry. I can get that information, but I know that most of the public is not getting that feedback, and Kathy would not want most of the public to get their feedback via individual phone calls. So I know one of the objectives is for the PR firm to set up a website to provide information to the cyclists. That's a good thing. So I think she's looking to get to that point to where that can be an avenue for these kind of changes. But we're getting sort of, there's some important things coming up right now. I think that the implementing Sharrows on Thousand Oaks Boulevard is going to be the most highly visible impact from the team's recommendations. Kathy's indicated that she wants to get the city chief information officer, or there's some sort of employee of the city who will help with this sort of PR. And I think things sort of got delayed by about a month, so that that person could be gotten involved. But we're just not getting any feedback. I know I'm going to get a lot of questions, and I just know I commute down Thousand Oaks Boulevard every day. I'm going to see the first one by surprise. I'm just going to be riding down the road, and there it'll be. And sort of like to be able to know in advance when this is going to be happening, so that I can be prepared, and we can prepare the cycling community for what's happening. So I think I was here in October. I thought it was imminent. I'd heard stencils have been prepared, crews are being trained, or something like that. And I came up here and said, "Hey, make sure it's the right distance from the curb." It was like a kid anticipating the immediate delivery of a new red wagon. But anyway, more feedback, I guess, as to exact dates would be appreciated. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chambers. Turn things over to Mr. Mashiko.
Yes, we do have a staff member devoted to the this bicycle education and implementation plan. Perhaps what we can do is at the next meeting provide maybe a detailed report with some timeline, so that the public is aware, or understanding of what's going to be happening this year. I did hear that those legends or stencils to indicate at a traffic signal where cyclists should be in order to be detected, those are going to go in this year. But again, we'd have to have the staff person that is handling that to provide the timeline of when that's going to occur. As well as on Thousand Oaks Boulevard, there's another plan to put in Sharrows to advise motorists that the road is shared by the cyclists as well.
Can I make a suggestion? Being that we have Mr. Simmons and Mr. Chambers' contact information here, and basically every meeting, not only here but throughout town, that might be impacting cyclists, they're attending. One of them at least is always there. Can we ask both Drew, our PIO, as well as the staff person, to keep them in the loop as sort of the lead individuals for the rest of the community? Thank you. Sure.
I left a little piece off my presentation there. I don't want to sound like the squeaking wheel all the time. I want to thank city staff and the council for the bike lane that we got on the side of Moore Park Road going north from Wilbur on towards Gainesboro. It's not as wide as we'd liked it, but we realized it was a very expensive project putting in that sidewalk and that bike lane, and we appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Simmons. With that, we've still got engineers' comments on B and C, if you have any, and I don't know if this report is just representative enough or if you need to introduce it in some way.
Item 13B is just a brief couple sentences about what the activity has been on the bicycle advisory team, and then I believe 13C deals with the school traffic safety team. I know Commissioner McKay is a member of that team, and they've gone through a number of schools already. They're visiting each school, looking at the traffic flow and looking at various improvements and enhancements that could be done to improve traffic flow. On here is a checklist of things that they look at as a committee when they meet on site and they walk in the field and observe morning and afternoon traffic. And there's also a schedule showing which schools that they're going to be looking at this year. And I believe there's also a summary of a couple of schools they've already evaluated, Colina and Madrona, as well as Sequoia.
Thank you, Mr. Machiko. And that just gives me an opportunity to mention a couple things. Commissioner McKay, actually, immediate past Chair McKay, was ill tonight with the flu that's either past folks or on their way for some of us. But when you look at your report tonight, you'll see she has been diligent in attending all the schools. So just for our next meeting, if we could just place on the agenda a little place to thank her and recognize her, not only for the past year, but her extraordinary work with the schools. And I'm sure if she's watching at home, we can talk her into working on all the schools. And with that, we'll go to agenda item number 14. We're scheduled for a meeting of February the 20th. So if there's no other business, the Traffic and Transportation Advisory Commission will be adjourned until 7:30 Wednesday, February 20th at February 20th, 2008 in the Boardroom at Civic Arts Plaza. And with that, good night and thank you very much.